What's up, everybody? Chicago Goonier here, bringing another Arsenal talk. Haven't done one in a while. There hasn't been really much going on, other than Copa America and Euros, and I'm not going to really get into that, other than maybe doing updates on Arsenal players. But what's the real point of doing that? I wasn't going to make video after video of talking about possible transfers, possible rumors. I think I covered that in one of my last episodes of, trying to go through some names. But, doing that almost every day or, even 3 times a week, especially being an Arsenal fan, it can get very frustrating. This summer is becoming, almost like probably like the last like 5 or 6 um, transfer windows other than last summer. I mean, last summer we all thought that Arsene Wenger was complete bullshit. That he said we were only going to sign Czech and that was it because no one else was available. It was going to be a slow summer as far as the transfer market goes, and we were always hoping that maybe there was a diamond in the rough somewhere that we were going to sign out of nowhere. We were always hoping for that, but again, we at some point you had to realize that we weren't going to sign anybody. But this summer it was going to be different. We flopped in the league. Of course, we got knocked out in the Champions League, and the the uh, revolution of the fans of getting on Arsene Wenger's back, getting on the board's back, Stan Kroenke, Ivan Gazidis, you name it. You knew, at the end of the season of how bad we flopped and how badly everything went, especially in the second half of the season, uh, that there's changes that need to be made. Whether it was the manager or whether it was coaches, whether it was players, but we definitely know that we need players. We need more better players to come in so we can compete. So we don't flop in the league. So we can compete in Champions League. And I think almost any Arsenal fan, at least any logical Arsenal fan, can agree with that. Can see where the holes are, where the inconsistencies are, and what we need to become a better team, become a more dangerous team, a feared team once again. We haven't been a feared team in a long time. Um, you know, Teams have found us out. We have a plan A, we don't have a plan B. Pretty much try to play the same way almost every single fucking time, and it's finally coming to the forefront to where people are finally acknowledging that there is a problem. But going through this transfer window, it's you're seeing the likes of Manchester United and some of these bigger clubs get their business done early. We thought with the signing of Granit Xhaka that, oh my God, we're going to get our business done early this summer. We have tons of leads. We have tons of we have the players set in place that we're going to talk to, and we're going to try to get in early rather than later. Given the fact that the Euros is going to be played, given the fact that if a single player has an amazing tournament, that their price is just going to skyrocket just based on that. I mean, that's the way the world works. That's the way football works. Sometimes you've seen it 2 years ago when the World Cup concluded. I mean, 70 million euros for a guy like James Rodriguez. While he is a good player, he's not worth 70 million euros. Just because he had a great World Cup doesn't mean he's worth that much money, and that's the result of a tournament, especially as something as big as the World Cup. But going into this transfer window again, Vardy seemed like almost like a slam dunk. Everybody was reporting it. It was a slam dunk. You even had some of the most reliable sources from like Sky Sports and the Guardian and the Mirror and any kind of big news outlet carried this story that Vardy was coming to Arsenal. But of course, a day or two later, he kind of comes out through his own people and says that he wants to take time and think about it. Right there, some of the red flags went up, and you're thinking, you know, he's probably not going to sign. But at the same time, you're thinking, well, it's Arsenal. Why would he say no to Arsenal? He had, you know, good reasons to stay there. He wanted to stay loyal. I don't blame him for staying. I know we're all thinking, well, God, it's Arsenal. Why wouldn't you want to come here? Um, but at the same time, you have to respect the guy for staying loyal. We couldn't, as Arsenal fans. I mean, some Arsenal fans did, which was a fucking joke. A lot of some Arsenal fans gave him stick for it. While we're giving stick still to RVP and Cesc Fabregas and Nasri and all these players that left Arsenal at one point or another, and we're trying to give someone stick for being actually loyal to their club. And I think it was just wrong on a lot of people's parts to try to give him stick. But in my respects, I respect the guy for staying there. And he's 29 years old. He's not getting any younger. He's going to be on the wrong side of 30 next season. Um, and you know, why not stay if they're going to offer him one more year with the same money, whether it's 120 or 130 pounds a week? You know, on a business sense, on a player sense, when he's more thinking of his retirement now than he is thinking about his prime. It's a smart move by him. We were going to only offer him 3 years and 120 thousand pounds a week. Kind of a smart move to get that extra year. Because even when he reaches, 33, 34, he can knock himself down to a lower league side or even a championship side and still make a decent amount of money. He definitely won't be making the 120, but maybe he'll make 50, 60K a year or something as a 34, 35-year old. Maybe he'll come over to the U.S. Who knows? Um, but you can't knock the guy for doing that. But going onward after that, there was a tweet made uh, by this guy named Pablo. I'm sure a lot of people follow him. He makes tweets. His tweets are usually dead on about injury news and team news. He's wishy-washy when it comes to transfer news, but he's been dead on this summer so far with Granit Xhaka and then also um, with Vardy. Um, as far as Vardy saying that we're going to give Vardy, he made a tweet before some of the other people did. Um, but he made a tweet just this week saying that Vardy was Plan A, but the worrying thing is that we didn't have a Plan B, and that if you read that tweet, your heart just broke as an Arsenal fan because we're back to square one. We have no other prospects, which is ridiculous. When you're a club like that, when your club is this size, you always need a plan B, C, D, E, F, G going into this transfer window. You just can't bank on someone just because you are Arsenal that they're going to say yes. We have nothing to go on other than two FA Cups to say that we're going to win the league. We're serious about winning Champions League. It's not like that anymore. We had that opportunity back in, 07, 08, 09 because we were still competing in Champions League, but we just didn't have any money to spend, unfortunately. I mean, that was the time, if any time, after making that Champions League final, uh, you know, 2 years removed from the Invincibles, that was the real time of getting every hot prospect and every possible world class player to come here, but we just didn't have the money. And now, people are looking at us and we're kind of a punchline to some degree. I mean, people are still using the fourth place joke, every single day. And that's what happens. That's the reputation you get as a football club um, when you don't produce, league titles, when you don't produce deep runs into the Champions League. Players are going to look at other teams and go there first rather than us. So we don't have that leverage, I think, anymore. Is it still a sexy club to come to? Is it still, Arsenal Football Club? Yes. Obviously it didn't take Granit Xhaka, you know, too much convincing to come here. He wanted to come here. There's going to be a ton of players who want to come here, and there's going to be a ton of players who don't want to come here. It's just all in what they feel and what they want. But the fact that we didn't have any plan B, oh God, man. I mean, I don't know what to say. I really don't. It's worrying. It's worrying on the fact that an old timer like Arsene Wenger, even who's ever in charge of this of our transfer policies, that we don't have a plan B because we should have. Our plan B is a Japanese kid. Are you fucking kidding me? They did damage control on I believe it was a Telegraph. Yeah, it was a Telegraph article talking about how the Japanese player is only for the future. I mean, uh, but at the same time, they said we're still looking for a senior striker and a center half. So who knows what to believe, what not to believe. We're still getting links to Lacazette. Lacazette seems like the strongest link right now. The Romelu Lukaku links have kind of silenced a little bit, which might be a good thing. Sometimes, I made a tweet today, retweeted somebody else's uh, post today saying that Lukaku's odds of coming to Arsenal has just gotten better overnight. So something might be going on. Something might be going on. Sometimes that's how it happens when a player's name starts to dwindle a little bit. When a player's name starts to go silent when they're linked to a big club, sometimes that's a sign that a club like Arsenal might be buying that player. And Lacazette and Morata might be a smokescreen, so no other team will come in, excuse me, for a guy like Lukaku. If we have a deal possibly in place for 45 million pounds or 50 million pounds, that maybe someone hears about it and says, well, you know what, we'll offer 55 million pounds, because sometimes that's how it works. You won't, if the player is going to be signed or whatever, I'm going to wait until I hear something of a medical possibly, or if some of the eagle eye, um, you know, Arsenal players that are stalking the Heathrow airport, that they're going to see the player coming off a plane or something. They have a picture of them in London. Maybe then I'll start believing in a certain player coming to Arsenal. But right now it's just hearsay. It's all guessing game currently, which is shocking. People are saying, well, the window's only been open for a week. The window, just because the window just opened up doesn't mean you can't start talking to players prior to that. You should be talking to players, 4, 5, 6 months prior to you putting in the bid and getting a contract written up. You know, Granit Xhaka, case in point, Arsene Wenger talked to him a year prior to him even coming to Arsenal. That's how long they were talking to him to coming to Arsenal. And some of these things take a long time. They just, it's just not okay. The window's open. Let's pick up the phone and start calling players. That's not how it works. It's this isn't the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NFL, and you know where free agency is directly right after the season ends, almost. Right after the playoffs. And I think you can almost spot who the Americans are, as far as Arsenal fans sometimes are, with comments like that of the window just open, relax, it's open for a while. Big clubs get their shit done early, to where Arsenal, they're like a mildly um, you know special needs kid who needs time to get things done. Um, and it's just kind of ridiculous of the excuses already that are being made for Arsene Wenger and our transfer policies. This late into the summer, because it is kind of late into the summer. If you think about it, August 13th is our first game. That's what, less than a month, or a little bit over a month now. I think it's what, today's July 8th. It'll be July. Well, actually, it's July 9th. August 13th. I mean, you're talking about 30, 35, 36 days until the opening game, and you want these guys to get into training if they're available to train right now, because you want them to have some kind of uh, you want them to get some type of familiarity with the other players. You just can't throw a brand new player into a club and expect him to produce almost immediately. You just can't do it. You need time to learn the system, learn what the strengths and weaknesses of your teammates. It's going to take time, but to get that player in as early as possible, it just benefits us, and it benefits the other players as well. So a lot of these excuses, once again, uh, with Arsenal fans, all the AKB still trying to defend Arsene Wenger and his policies. It's a fucking joke. It really is. Um, but that's enough for about the transfer window. Like I said, I have nothing really more to say or nothing to say because there's nothing really out there that's really solid to really go on and talk about. Yeah, we need a striker. We need a center half. We need a winger, in my opinion. But it seems like more faith is going to be put in Oxlade-Chamberlain and Theo Walcott once again. Maybe even Joel Campbell. Hopefully that guy can get games. If he doesn't, he should just leave during the winter time because he is wasting his talent here. He's not appreciated by the manager or the coaching staff, and it's really sad. I've watched him all throughout CONCACAF because he plays for Costa Rica, and I remember seeing the kid when he was 18 years old, and you could just see the talent, you could see the desire, you could see the heart, you can see the chip on his shoulder to prove that he's good enough, and you're looking at a Theo Walcott, Oxlade-Chamberlain, which I'm going to get into here in a little bit. Um, you just see those guys, and you're just thinking, where is that desire? Where is that heart? Where is that chip on your shoulder that you're going to prove everybody wrong? And they just don't have it. Maybe it's because they are in England. Maybe because they are English. Maybe because that you'll have so many fans defending you rather than giving you a hard time. But this is going to be what I really want to talk about here, and it's the title of this video is this English generation versus the French generation. Now you look at Arsene Wenger. He is basically a football god in France. He is so well respected. I mean, you have players at every game he's been to, every France national game at the Euros that he's been to. French national players who are not even on Arsenal, there's only two, obviously, come over to him and shake his hand before the game. While they're doing warm ups, they go over to him and shake his hand. That's huge amounts of respect from the French players. That one, he's not their manager. Two, they're not even on Arsenal, but yet they go over to him and shake his hand. Yeah, he is a football god in France. But then when you think about that, you look at this French generation, and it's just like one good player after one good, it's one good player after another. They really took the model of Germany and revamped their entire youth system to get where they are today. I mean, look at Germany. They revamped their system after the '06 World Cup. They made the semifinal in 2010 and they won it in 2014. And they've had deep runs in the Euros too. 2012 they made the semifinal. This year they made the semifinal again. That's what you do when you revamp your whole system and try to get everybody in your nation to think about winning. Because leading up to that, Germany was kind of stalemate a little bit. They weren't producing great players like they were used to, like in '60s, '70s, '80s, '90s, to where they were just producing tons of world class talent. To where in the early 2000s, not so much. So they looked at it, they blew it up, they rebuilt. And that's what France did. That's what France did after the 2010 World Cup, after they had their little mutiny during that World Cup, which was led by one of the leaders was Sammy Nasri, and that's why he's no longer a part of the national team. But you saw this rebuilding of France and all these young players coming through the system. You look at the French national team currently. There was only I think one player on the starting 11 who actually still plays in France. The rest of them play abroad. The whole makeup of the team, I would have to look at it. again, but there's only a small handful of players that actually play in Liga. The rest of them play abroad. That's always kind of been the MO of French players that, once they get up to a certain skill level, or if they get praised, saying this is the next Vieira, this is the next Thierry Henry, this is the next Zidane, once they kind of get that label, they move abroad almost immediately. And there's some players who even have played in some Spanish academies almost since they were little kids. But these French players are always willing to move abroad to where you look at Italy, Germany, um, Spain, even. Spain has probably the most players that play over abroad than any other, country. I'm talking about like good players. I mean, Germany has a few good players that play abroad. Italy, a few, not many, that play abroad. England, of course, nothing. That whole team plays in England, and which I think is one of their greatest mishaps is that they don't let any one of their players go really to play abroad to get a new idea about football and maybe how it's played or a different style of play and whatnot. That's just like another argument, um, but England their entire team plays in England. As far as France goes, I mean every single player basically plays abroad, and they're not ashamed or fearful to do that. One, I think it's because of the French tax. Obviously, Liga gets between them and Serie A, it's probably like the lowest league of the top five leagues. But they still have a lot of talent in the league, but it's not the talent of a Premier League, a La Liga, or Bundesliga, obviously. Um, and they don't actually pay out what other countries pay out. England obviously is just going nuts right now with the wages because of the new TV contracts. But most of the French players leave, and you're looking at Arsene Wenger being this French god, and everybody basically, you've had players from France who play abroad that say, "I would love to play for Arsene Wenger. That's my dream." One of those players was Lacazette. He said that last summer actually, when we were supposed to be in for him possibly last summer. Um, he's come out and said that. Sissoko is trying to get a move to Arsenal. He's never going to make it here, but he said that too. There's been a lot of French players who have said that over the years, and you're looking at this French team, and you're just like, how did all these players slip through the cracks? How did all these players not get a look? And it's not like they cost a ton of money either. Now they do, obviously. I mean, fucking Griezmann has an $80 million buyout clause in his contract now. He just signed new paper with Atletico Madrid. We could have had him 2 summers ago if one we offered enough and two we offered enough wages. I mean, could you imagine that bringing him and Alexis Sanchez in at the same time? Would have been ridiculous. I wanted him back 2 years ago when Alexis Sanchez came in at the same time. I wanted him terribly, but we didn't go after him. Why? He's a French player. Arsene should know all these players. He should have, if he's so well respected by the players, he's so well respected by the French coaches in France. Back in the day, he had French players lining up. I mean, we basically almost were the French national team at one point or another. Um, especially our front line at Arsenal. When you're taking the midfield up to the striker, we were basically almost like a French national team at one point. But then where did it all go? What happened? Yeah, I know there was a few years there where France wasn't really, producing that much talent. But then look at this new crop of generation. It's just good to great player almost at every single position, except for maybe their fullbacks. Their fullbacks are, obviously with Evra and Sanya. I mean, they're fossils by this point. So you're not going to go after guys like that. But if you're looking at their midfield, You're looking at their wingers. They're looking at their possible strikers. Other than Olivier Giroud, they're deep. They have a ton of talent, and at one point or another, they didn't cost next to anything. But yet, what do? We go out and buy Yaya Sanogo of all players, who can't even get into the first team. He'll probably make the first team this year because we don't have any strikers other than Olivier Giroud. And it's just you go through that French national team and you go through maybe the top 50 French players in the world currently, and you look at that list and you're just like, you look at some of the clubs they're playing for too, and you're just like, what happened here? Why didn't we buy into some of these players when they were cheap? I mean, fucking Pogba, they're saying he's going to go for 100 million when 2 or 3 years ago Juventus said something like, "Oh, we want 50, 40 million for him." Griezmann. I mean, all these players that would help Arsenal, that would make us better, and they're all producing too. That's the crazy thing about it. They all look like they have a chip on their shoulder. They all look like they want to prove something, not only in this Euros but with their club teams as well. And it's really frustrating to think that we have this French football god as a manager, but yet he can't identify his own country's best players, even when they're younger, even with the technology that we have now. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. It doesn't matter if you are a bench player on PSG or Monaco or Lyon or Marseille or any of those teams, you're going to have a fucking YouTube video on YouTube with your skills, your goals, your assists, everything, passes, everything. But yet we're seeing all this young talent go elsewhere and not coming to us. But then it goes to the verse side with this English generation. Now, as far as Arsenal goes, it's a lot easier for us to scout England than it is to scout France. Why? Because we are based in London. It's easier for scouts to drive an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours up to Manchester or Southampton or anywhere in England and scout these young players. Arsene Wenger, if you even look at the makeup of Arsenal currently, we have a lot of English players. I know the English, they love having a strong English core in their team because, well, that's their home. I get it. I understand it. I totally get it. But not to the point where it's going to hurt your club. Not to the point to where you don't see these players develop like they should be. And with this English generation, Arsene Wenger must have thought that this English generation was going to be better than the French generation, and it blew up in his face. It was a it was one of the worst gambles that you could ever make. And he took gambles on several of them. Kieran Gibbs, he hasn't gotten better. He can't even get into the starting lineup. Oxlade-Chamberlain, he can't stay healthy. He's inconsistent. Hasn't gotten better since he's been here. Theo Walcott, same way. Jack Wilshere, he can't even stay healthy. The only kind of brights, Danny Welbeck, I feel sorry for the guy, obviously, with his injuries, with his knee injuries, unfortunately, because he kind of he has that makeup of that guy who's just gonna give you everything that he has every second that he's out on the pitch. And it's unfortunate for him, and he's probably like one of the English core players that we do have. Maybe other than Jack, that'll just give you everything. But during this time frame, if you're looking at the makeup of this English players, I mean, they just had a disaster of Euros. I mean, it was a joke. I mean, they embarrassed themselves. I mean, yeah, a lot of it came down to the manager and the team selection and the starting team selection. But they had enough talent on that pitch to beat Russia, to beat Wales, to beat Slovakia, and to even beat Iceland. But they couldn't put it together. One of the reasons I think it is because they all play in the same country. You could just hear, I was listening to Talk Sport before this Euros even started, during the Euros, and they're just talking about stories of how, you know, when Liverpool players came, and it was Manchester United players, they were all in their like little cliques, and they still all hated each other. Instead of saying fuck our differences, fuck our agendas, let's just play for our country, they still have those little cliques. They still have that, they're not united at all. They still have that hatred, even going onto the pitch playing a game. They're not playing with that chip on their shoulder. And Arsene Wenger must have thought somehow, some way, that this English core, that this English generation was going to be better than the French generation. When you see English players, in my opinion, get worse and worse as years go on, not better and better. I mean, talk to any English fan, and they will rant to you for about an hour of how terrible our youth system is and how terrible our FA, how terrible the English FA is, as as opposed to France, Germany, Italy, Spain, all the big boys. To where instead of teams are fighting against each other, they'll come together and say we have to focus on this and we have to make our national team better. Because at the end of the day, too, that's what's going to make your league better too. Especially if you don't sell off your players to a Spanish side or a French side or a German side or anything. All of them stay in house. What I think England needs is an outsider, a complete outsider, whether he's from Germany. I hear you might be interested, or the English FA is interested in Jurgen Klinsmann. Please take him because that guy sucks as a football manager. He's fucking awful. I hope he signs with England because the guy's awful. But at the same time, I think you guys need an outside influence instead of a another English manager who doesn't know what he's doing, who doesn't have a iron foot to stick up those players' asses and says, "Look, you're playing for your country. You're not playing for yourselves. You're playing for your countrymen." But they just don't have that, unfortunately. And how Arsene Wenger must have thought that this English generation was going to be better than the French generation is a freaking joke. And you're seeing it front and center right now. I know it's their home country. They have the home fans behind them. Um, but at the same time, you can see those players giving it everything they have. And you can see the quality and the technical ability in each of those players and how good they could be. To where you just don't see it in England, on the England national team. You don't see it with a lot of these English core players. And I just don't understand. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense of how you can let so many French players go by the wayside and go to other big clubs and go to even some mid-sized big clubs, and we lose out on just about almost every single one of them. I think through these last 5 years, we've had the least amount of French players that we've ever had in our system. I know throughout after after the '06 '07 campaign, we started to move towards more of a Spanish core, I guess you can say, just because Spain was was the flavor of the month. They were starting to really, get their golden generation intact. Of course, they won the Euros twice, and then they win the World Cup. And you, Arsene Wenger, it seemed like he got caught in that flavor of the month rather than just sticking to what he knew and what worked. And that's where, a lot of our faults came into play, where we got caught up in that flavor of the month and we went towards that instead of going through what got us there. What made us so great was pace and power. Then we went to small and technical. But now you're looking at some of these French players and you're just like, why? Why? Why are they going to this club? Why aren't they coming to Arsenal? So many of these players say they want to play for Arsene Wenger, that it's their dream to play for Arsene Wenger, but yet we're not getting any of them. One of it probably has to do with our bidding. Two has to do probably with our wages as well. It was just put on Reddit today that we are the fifth most valuable club in the world, according to Forbes magazine, according to Forbes.com. The fifth largest. Only Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, and Bayern Munich are in front of us. When it used to be, I think we were seventh because I think Manchester United or Manchester City and Chelsea were in front of us. Now we're in fifth. But yet we're acting like we are like the 20th biggest club in the world with the 20th largest amount of money. You have to start paying players what they're worth. You have to start giving a Mesut Ozil 200 grand a week. Alexis Sanchez 180, 200 grand a week. You have to put that out there so other players know that you're serious, that you're actually going to pay them good money to come here. And that's probably what it is too. To where some English players, they might say, oh, 100 grand a week. Oh, yeah, I'll take that. Maybe it's easier to convince them to take a smaller contract rather than maybe a French player who is not only looking to play for a big club but is also looking for a good payday. And if he's not offering it to those players, it's kind of like a joke. It's like slapping clubs. A lot of this transfer talk. It's we're starting to get the reputation that we undervalue and we come in with such a low bid that clubs don't even want to talk to us anymore because they know we're going to try to lowball them and we're not coming in with a fair enough bid so the talks continue. We might come in, let's say for shits and giggles that Lacazette is up for a bid and that the president of Lyon says, yes, we're going to sell him this summer. We come in with a 31 million pound bid or a 31 million euro bid. It's a joke. But then some other club comes out of, some other club right after this bids 40 million euros. And another club comes in and uh, uh, bids 38 million euros. They're not going to call us back. They're not going to even call us back to say, hey, this team offered 40, this other team offered 38. No, they're going to call back those two teams rather than us because those teams are serious. We're not serious. And like I said, between this French core and this English core, it was a gamble that blew up in his face. Even when it blew up in his face, and some of these players have some longevity already to them. Like a Griezmann. He was good at Real Sociedad. The only kind of ridiculous transfer fee that I've seen over the last couple of years is, obviously Martial, that went to Manchester United. I think his total transfer fee was something like 65 million euros or something, which is crazy. But at the same time, with all the with all these other players moving abroad from France, you're looking at transfer fees of, you know, 15 million, 20 million, 25 million euros to a big club like Arsenal. That it's like a fucking parking ticket in the long run. And if you have enough faith in players that they will end up producing for you and they have a ton of potential and they might have a resale value double of what you actually paid for, then it shouldn't matter what the fucking transfer fee is. But, you know, I kind of rambled on long enough about this, but, tell me what you think. Do you think that Arsene Wenger took a gamble and thought this English core was going to be better than the French core? Because I think he did. I mean, it's pretty obvious at this stage when you see all these good French players running around on other teams, and we supposedly have this French football god um, at the helm of Arsenal. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think about the transfer, uh, our transfer lack of, uh, you know, transfer business this summer. Um, as time goes on, man, I mean, if we don't, honestly, I think if we don't get anything in the next 2 weeks as far as a striker goes, whether it's Lacazette, Lukaku, or Morata, I just can't see it happening. I can't see it going down at all. Um, and we're just going to be stuck with Giroud, Sonogo, and possibly Akpom as our strike force. And if that happens, we probably won't make top four this year because there's going to be other clubs like a Manchester United, like a Chelsea, who are just going to be even Liverpool. They're just going to be focused on the league. I can already see it now. Jose Mourinho is not going to take the Europa League seriously at all. And he probably told that to the ownership group of Manchester United already. He probably just said, Europa League, I don't care about it. I'll get you top four this year, but just let me focus on the league and let me do things my way. And he'll probably get it, honestly. And then Chelsea, same thing. Conte coming in, he had an impressive Euros. They got unlucky, obviously, with the shootout. But you're looking at something. Klopp is going to have a whole preseason to get these guys going and running. Um, they're going to have just the league and the FA Cup to worry about. League Cup. They have no European football. Same with Chelsea. It's going to be a tough, tough season, especially if we don't go out there and buy a striker. That's the main. I don't care if we don't buy a center half as long as Cullum Chambers doesn't go out alone. I you know yeah, we need a center half. We need another one. I want to see Pure gone or on the bench for the entire season. But it's just going to be a tough, tough year because we're going to be focused on league, focused on Champions League, focused on the FA Cup, and Arson sold that he's going to be trying to focus on Champions League and shit. That at some point we're just gonna fall down, and this might be their year. This might be the year that our luck has run out. And again, behind the eight ball, when we should be out in the forefront, we should be the ones that everybody else is chasing when it's just not. You're just seeing it, especially in the transfer window, and it's going to be a scary year. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you guys later.